waiver. And then we'll hopefully have plenty of time here for some questions at the end. All right, so let's get into the IDD modernization program on the overview. So projects under the program right now, this is we've got the MFEI, or the Medicaid Functional Eligibility Instrument. Right now, this is on track. We're targeting July 1 of 2025 to roll this new level of care tool out. Unbundling of day services. We're in progress right now. There's going to be, we're looking at July 1, 2026 date, or no sooner than July 1, 2026. Conflict-free case management. That's also in progress with a to be determined date. And then the community supports waiver, which I know is one of our main priorities with a lot of these efforts. That is targeted for late spring of 2026, potentially into summer of 2026 is when that might hoping to go live there. And then we've got we'll dig into some grant opportunities that we're going to have available here pretty soon in March through May to be released of 2025.
Well, you don't have sound on over there. Over where?
So on the overall timelines for some of these modernization projects, on the MFEI, we are looking at again, like I said, that July 1 date. Right now, we're working with CDDOs and some internal system changes to make sure that this can happen. We're also got a contractor who's conducting a rate study, both for IDD services, but also for planned and proposed community support waiver services. So we're hopeful that that'll yield some really valuable insights as we develop that waiver out. Unbundling of day services. Again, looking no earlier than July 1st of 2026. We're going to be doing a lot more stakeholder engagement, planning some family advisory groups to review some of these services definitions and get a lot more feedback there, because we've heard you all loud and clear, and we want to make sure that we're doing this carefully and correctly. So a best case scenario, a waiver amendment would be going out in April of next year. On the community support waiver, we are currently in the draft phase right now, and planning for a formal public comment in late this fall, and then it goes to CMS for their review, and we're hoping that we can get that one stood up and ready to start serving participants in July of next year. Conflict-free case management and conflict of interest work stream. This is one where we're still in kind of that planning and roadmap creation phase. I can kind of get into this a little bit later, but this does impact our community support waiver development. It intersects pretty heavily with it. However, we're still, working with various stakeholders and have a contractor on board there to help us develop a roadmap that we can all get behind. And then on the grant streams, got a few different grant opportunities that we're getting ready to release here. The first one is what we're calling or terming the New Day Grant. This is supposed to help support day support providers and potentially modifying their service delivery models to come into compliance with settings rule. And then we've got a grant opportunity from Senate Bill 15, which was passed last year. This one is specifically targeted at those IDD providers who also hold a 14C certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor, to hopefully, um, get participants that they're paying up to minimum wage, but also transition into models that are more geared towards competitive integrated employment. And then we've got some just general HCBS capacity grants that we're hoping to get out as well. So, geared at uh, getting more capacity for the community support waiver, but also just HCBS in general. We know that there's a quite a capacity crisis across all of our HCBS waivers, and so we want to do what we can to try to support agencies and being able to increase that capacity, knowing that there's a capacity issue is going to take a multi-pronged effort. Next slide, please. So starting with the Medicaid functional eligibility instrument for IDD. So just kind of a summary of this project from 2015 to 2020, the KDADs collaborated with the University of Kansas, or KU, and we had an IDD work group to adapt the Inter-I assessment into a Kansas specific tool called the Medicaid Functional Eligibility Instrument. MFEI, some people call it MEFI, makes no difference to us. We also, one of the reasons we landed on this was because it would provide a kind of a research-backed, validated way to assess for waiver eligibility across multiple waiver populations. And we were actually successful in standing up the MFEI for the brain injury in 2019. So we do have quite a bit of track in the rear view with utilizing this MFEI tool. However, in 2022, CMS issued a corrective action plan. This highlighted, some systemic issues with our IDD system, including the need to enhance our level of care, or LOC, process. Point of clarification here: the level of care, again, is just determining whether or not you meet the criteria to receive the waiver service, to go on to the waiver or not. So around that same time, there was a special legislative task force committee on IDD modernization that met, and the big recommendation from that was obviously directing the department to start work on a community supports waiver, but it also highly recommended replacing our deficit-based basis assessment as the level of care assessment tool. And then in 2023, as we were gearing up for stakeholder engagement activities for the planned IDD renewal, we had some work groups focusing on the IDD functional assessment issues. Building on these efforts, we're planning on rolling out this MFEI for the IDD population and the new community sports waiver in 2025. So the implementation date for this is, like I said, planned for July 1st of 2025. So some of the key features of this is it's supposed to be really much more person-centered, where a lot of people that the basis assessment is just not it's heavily deficit focused. It's much more geared on behaviors and what a person can't do. So, we're really excited about being able to bring in something that is much more person-centered and is addressing, the participants' needs and strengths. This also helps us resolve some conflict of interest concerns around, who is the final determiner of eligibility and things like that. And, it just that research-backed, validated data component, I just can't overstate that really sets us on a path of being able to assess so many different things across the system. So another proposal to this is that it would be tied to 3 standard rates and a complex needs rate. So in some ways, this is simplifying the structure to meet the varying support needs, and also is cost neutral. So we're not taking any money out of the system. This is not a way to line you know uh, to plan for budget shortfalls or anything like that. There's no money leaving the IDD waiver system. It's also standardizing the MCO assessment. So, being able to merge a lot of the MFEI questions into the assessment, the needs assessment that the MCO will do, into a unified tool. The promise there is that needs assessment process could take quite a bit less time in that, but then it also allows us to assess between each of the MCOs on some of that objective, consistent, ensuring that those evaluations are consistently applied. And then increasing KDAD's oversight and accountability. So we're really looking to kind of ensure and increase transparency around how these assessment tools are applied, making sure that everything is done the same way. Scores come out the same across all 3 MCOs. Um, we'll also be able to audit outcomes and ensure accuracy, so making sure that there's no misuse of the system, while we're still can maintain that long-term fiscal sustainability. Next slide, please. Moving on to unbundling day services. So this is a key initiative under our IDD modernization efforts. It's really aimed at providing personalized and flexible services for individuals with IDD. The project is more of a restructuring of day support services into distinct tailored services that align with an individual's needs, their goals and preferences. This initiative is really trying to enhance choice, transparency, and service flexibility. So we want to ensure greater community integration and a lot more meaningful engagement for folks who are you know needing something to do during the day, whether that's a work-related activity, more community-based, or what. Again, it's all tied to that person-centered plan. Another feature is that this is bringing us into compliance with the HCBS settings rule. Right now, currently, day services, the day service definition is fairly broad and allows for a mix of activities, but not all day service providers provide that same mix of support. So CMS has essentially told us, that we have to provide clarity on the actual service. So it has to have a specific purpose and structure and expected outcomes, because it's all about helping individuals receive kind of the right supports at the right time based on their goals and needs and their plan. So the intention here is not to eliminate any existing supports, but just to really tweak and restructure them so that each service is clearly defined, fairly reimbursed, and just more generally tailored to the participants' needs and goals. So on these proposed new services, these are just again, proposals, nothing set in stone. Retirement and seniors day habilitation. So, for our older folks who maybe are kind of wanting to relax a little bit and felt they put in their time, that's a service. Community-based day habilitation. We've got providers who do some things like day services without walls. So this would be really trying to um, see some more of those types of activities. We've also got pre-vocational services. That's more of like job readiness. Life skills is focused on building those skills that are gonna aid you in your everyday living. We know a lot of providers kind of do that, currently. Career exploration and planning. This would be something that comes before a pre-vocational service. So trying to figure out um, what kind of job would you like? Do you want to explore it? Is there, what are you interested in? Trying to figure out, mapping what a person's preferences and their skills to kind of what they could potentially do. So just kind of a sandbox, towards kind of an employment goal potentially. And then obviously individualized employment services. So this is one that, looks pretty similar to our supported employment service as it is. And then a benefit planning service as well. So this one's more geared towards those individuals who maybe do have a competitively integrated job and, need to kind of assess how that extra income may impact their benefits and potentially their Medicaid eligibility and Social Security and things like that. I've uh, starred those services that are also proposed for the new community support waiver. Um, so next steps on this one is we're forming an advisory group comprising participants receiving services under the waiver and their families. We're hoping that this engagement with participants and family members will provide, some suggestions on definitions and tweaks that we need to make, or if we need to kind of pivot and go a different direction, we can certainly do that too. We're going to continue stakeholder engagement on this. I can't stress this enough. Nothing is set in stone around unbundling of day services. So, we'll continue talking with folks, setting up various groups throughout 2025 and into 2026, with, like I said, the stated goal to amend the IDD waiver no sooner than in July of 2026. Next slide, please. All right, conflict-free case management. So, this is I know a hot button topic as well. So, kind of why this matters is that in a conflict-free system, we have to ensure that service and support planning decisions are guided solely by the person's needs and preferences. You know, I understand, I think everybody here at KDADS understands that, in our interactions with case managers and providers that we know everyone's deeply committed to helping the folks that they serve lead independent, fulfilling lives. We certainly don't want to give the impression that is not the foremost goal for case managers or the providers that they maybe are employed by. However, CMS has told us that a good intentions alone is not enough, and that a kind of a system-wide structure or restructure is needed in place that will, you know, guarantee fairness and neutrality for every person, no matter who they receive services from, protect providers from even the perception of bias. And again, perception is the operative word there. We know that everyone has biases, and we know that, I recognize that having a TCM and a provider kind of all under one roof works really, really well. The problem is it works really well until it doesn't work anymore. So we want to kind of remove um, providers and case managers from potentially some of those difficult ethical dilemmas and the self-policing that they're kind of asked to do now. And then the final point here is ensures compliance with federal regulations and safeguards 60% of the HCBS funding that is fronted by the federal government. So, I mean, kind of on that piece right now, roughly we budget about 70,000 per person per year for each person on the IDD waiver. So, if the feds were to come drop the hammer on the state, I mean, we'd be looking at a reduction down to less than $30,000 per person per year, which would be pretty catastrophic to the system. So those are the sorts of things that keep me up at night. Given the current political climate, we really wanted to reduce the risk. Um, that they could potentially claw back funds, and the state would either have to find some money in the couch cushions to cover that, or I honestly don't know how we would navigate that. And so my main intent is avoiding that. I tend to consider myself somebody who's got a high risk profile, but this really does it keeps me up at night. So here in the reality of the current system, again, just kind of summarizing here, even if most providers are doing the right thing, it's that lack of a conflict-free structure that is exposing everyone, the entire IDD system, not even the entire IDD system, the entire HCBS system is scrutinized because of this. We also know that case managers may feel pressure, even unintended, to align support recommendations with organizational interests. I don't think anyone is doing that intentionally. I've not heard that. It's again, it goes back to that perception of of um, of undue influence. And then reiterating that the compliance and the funding risks. So we are already under a corrective action plan related to this issue. CMS is expecting a clear and statewide roadmap toward resolution. So that is something that we're trying to get in place over the next few months. And down here on our path forward, we're planning on doing a few different things. One of them, I hit on this, is the grants around conflict of interest. So we want to be able to increase the availability and capacity of independent TCM agencies to provide participants with more choice and to remove any of those doubts about fairness in service and support planning. We recognize that there's a dearth of independent TCM agencies. And so this is really kind of framed as increasing the capacity of those agencies, but also if there are, agencies that would, that are currently offering waiver services and case management services, and they wanted to go ahead and try to take a leap towards splitting, we would want to be able to support them for that as well. One of the other elements of this is that we're going to have to really issue some statewide oversight and consistency across all regions. So, that means things like updating policies, updating trainings, implementing different oversight mechanisms. That those oversights could look differently depending on what we ultimately land on as a compliance option. Or structural safeguards that would hopefully reduce that external scrutiny and ensure system works as we intended across the entire state. So the final point I want to make here is the compliance roadmap. So again, nothing is imminent for the IDD waiver at this point. So we will not be making any changes to the waiver until these issues have been kind of worked out with stakeholders, and we can develop an approach to compliance that meets the federal requirements, but also gets buy-in from the system as well. The real kicker here is, again, the community support waiver. So I'll touch on that, I think, in a future slide. All right, community supports waiver. This is again one that we're really eager to get stood up. So our new waiver planned for summer of 2026. This is supposed to help Kansans with IDD live independent lives at home and in the community. We already have one IDD waiver, but we know that we've got an extensive wait list. We also know that there's a lot of folks served both on the waiver and who are waiting on the wait list who maybe don't need that extensive kind of continuous 24-hour support. And so that's where this, sort of diet IDD waiver, if you will, comes into play. So it's going to cover just a broad range of HCBS designed to kind of increase the access to services, enhance those natural supports and family caregiving. Really heavily self-directed, providing budget authority for people to kind of really um, tailor the services that will help them live independently, integrated in their homes and in the communities, and find some of those kind of competitive integrated employment jobs. So these are all of the proposed services on the community support waiver. We're going through, a stakeholder kind of engagement process with a technical advisory group, and we've been having town halls on these as well. So it's going to be quite the menu of services for this waiver that people will be able to kind of choose from and build out um, their plans. Again, I've highlighted or asterisked those services that are also proposed services for our unbundling plan. I I would highlight here, like I said, we are, when it comes to the conflict-free piece, CMS has essentially told us that there are compliance concerns with our existing IDD waiver. We've essentially relegated, because we're under corrective action plan, we've essentially relegated that issue to just the IDD waiver. However, they've also told us that any new waiver application is not covered under that corrective action plan. So that means this waiver application, when we go to submit, CMS is expecting it to be fully compliant with the entire settings rule and the conflict-free case management provision. So that is some of the impetus around why we felt we needed to kind of get the ball rolling on this conflict-free piece, because if we don't, it potentially jeopardizes our ability to serve more people off the waiting list. Next slide, please. So this is just a kind of a brief high-level overview of what the waiver approval life cycle kind of looks like. Starting with the identification of the need, so defining that target population, assessing gaps, things like that. That was really done by that IDD modernization committee. They're the ones who kind of assessed that and met and said, hey, yes, we think this community support waiver targeted at the IDD population is what you need. So then the next kind of four lines in this table, that is really where we're at right now. So some of this stuff, it doesn't happen consecutively. You kind of are working on it in concurrent fashion, but that's designing the framework, determining what type of waiver, service definitions, procedure codes, eligibility criteria, the level of care, having to work with our single state Medicaid agency. And Kansas, our single state Medicaid agency is Kansas Department of Health and Environment, or KDHE. So we have to kind of align our policies with them. And then there's all this fiscal modeling and budgeting, ensuring, waivers have to be less expensive than if you were serving somebody in an institutional type setting. So we have to make sure that we're not going to be, it's not going to cost us more than than if we had been serving them in an ICF, and just make sure all our funding is aligned there. And then we actually get to do some of the some of the hard work of drafting the actual waiver. So if you've seen our IDD waiver, you know I can't remember how many pages it is, 200-300 pages, when it's all said and done. So that is, you know, basically our contract with CMS for how we are going to run this waiver. So that's the process we're kind of in right now, completing all the various sections, integrating, Medicaid policies, making sure that our quality measures could be operationalized and things of that nature. And then like I said, we've been holding town halls, collecting feedback throughout this process. But when the draft is finally ready, we feel like we've got a pretty good uh, product here. That is when it goes out for a formal 30-day public comment session. And that's where, we send it out on our listserv. We put it on our website. We make sure everybody knows, hey, the draft is out there. Please go review, make comments if you like. We have to log all of those comments and then summarize that eventually for CMS into the waiver itself. So this isn't just a new waiver. Anytime we make a waiver amendment, whether it's an amendment for unbundling or where it's an amendment for, the MFEI or anything that we would do, has to go out for a 30-day formal public comment before we can actually implement it. And I can tell you that CMS has really been paying attention to the feedback that we've gotten in those formal public comments, and they, kind of hold our feet over the fire on ensuring that we've got the requisite stakeholder engagement and that they're kind of on board with us. So after 30-day public comment, then we are submitting it to CMS. We're saying, hey, CMS, we think this is ready for your review, and we'd like you to go ahead and approve it. They come back with roughly 2 to 3 million questions on that submission, and we have to then do all this revising and negotiation on how the language should be before we finally get can secure that federal approval. So this process is incredibly arduous and does take months. If we're lucky on a simple amendment, it might take just 2 or 3 months. Oftentimes, they've told us with a new waiver, it's probably going to take upwards of a full 6-month period to kind of go in this back and forth with them. So in that time, then we're still kind of in doing stuff on the back end, behind the curtain, if you will. If there's regulations that need to be developed, if there's training that we can do with providers and MCOs, system development around claims and billing codes, that's what we'll be doing in the meantime there. And then, finally to the exciting piece, once we kind of get that rubber stamp from CMS and they say, yes, your effective date can be July 1 of 2026. That's when we get to start, on actually enrolling people and offering them waiver slots. And then we get to monitor utilization, adjust policies, do any refining and things of that nature. And then just the really final step here is kind of where we are with our waivers. Typically is they just kind of enter that ongoing operational oversight and reporting. We have to submit reports annually for compliance, track our quality measures and qualified providers and things of that nature in the waiver, and then make adjustments as we needed. So again, we're hoping to go to public comment late this year. It's going to take, like I said, 6 months for CMS to review, but I mean, as you can see, this process is just, there's a lot that happens in this. It's multi-step and just very highly iterative. All right, next slide. So on our grant opportunities, I kind of touched on this in an earlier slide. But again, new day. This is the purpose of this one is to try to help day service providers, existing day service providers, retool their programs into more clearly defined service categories. We know there are a lot of providers out there doing, just kind of a lot of different things. So the goal here is seeing like kind of some of the direct, knowing that things are just proposed, but seeing where things might be going. How can we support you to make enhancements to your programming towards that end? SB 15. The SB here is the Senate Bill 15 passed in last year. This is to provide wage matching to help individuals in the 14C setting earn at least minimum wage, while also supporting those providers and moving away from those sub-minimum wage models and into more the best practice type models. On the TCM and CDDO conflict of interest grants, these ones, pretty straightforward, really to try to assist providers who are currently maybe in a conflicted situation with maybe separating out their direct service piece from either that CDDO or TCM wing of their business model. And then finally, on HCBS capacity expansion, we really want to help, like I said, support providers in expanding their service capacity while ensuring alignment with those HCBS settings rule requirements. So next slide. I think, is this Robin now?
It sure is. Thanks, Seth.
Okay. Passing off to Robin.
Thanks, Seth. Yeah, I'm Robin Lohman. I'm the Assistant IDD Director, and I'm going to be talking about the proposed new service, Life Skill Services. So this is one of them. There was quite a few questions in the chat, and I just wanted to mention, I wanted to call out, yes, there's a few that are duplicated on the community supports waiver and the unbundling. And, one of the things we want to work on is provider capacity. There is so many great day service providers out there. And like Seth mentioned, the day services without walls, great job. And then similarly, there's some really great providers out there that have excellent life skill services. And so this is just kind of highlighting, what they're already doing. And so, but a service provider would be able to, choose which services they provide and, to offer diversity to the participants. So life skills services equip individuals with practical, social, and emotional skills essential for independent living, personal development, and community integration. These services focus on fostering self-sufficiency, decision-making, and relationship building while addressing everyday challenges that individuals with IDD might encounter. Some of the core components of life skills, and it's not limited to this, but independent living skills, budgeting, financial literacy, and bill payment, home management, which can include cooking, cleaning, and organization, navigating transportation options. And then number 2, personal development and social skills, communication skills for self-advocacy and relationship building, emotional regulation, stress management, and problem solving. Health and wellness includes personal hygiene, nutrition, and exercise education, understanding healthcare needs and scheduling medical appointments, and then mental health awareness and wellness strategies. The final one we identified was transition and future planning, setting personal and professional goals, exploring post-secondary education, training or volunteer opportunities, and understanding one's legal rights, benefits, and self-advocacy. Just real fast, so no, the life skill services that we're talking about is going to be on the community supports waiver and one of the unbundled day services. So life skill services, this is just kind of some examples of what a person's goals might be and how they might be implemented. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the questions. So first off, we have Emily. She just graduated from high school, and her goal is that she wants to move out of the family home, and like most of us do. And so the skills that were identified that are related to her person-centered goals are budgeting, meal prep, managing appointments. So in this scenario, they've broken them out about a month at a time. First, they're going to start off with basic budgeting and personal expenses. Then they'll move on to cooking simple meals and grocery lists. And then finally, they're going to practice scheduling and self-advocacy. So the outcome ideally would be gain confidence in daily tasks and preparing to transition to supported living. The second example is Marcus, and he's a little bit older, but he's lived with his parents for his life. And he does want to seek more independence in his daily routines. So the skills identified, they're related to his person-centered goals, transportation, medication reminders, personal care management. So again, this is broken up with different steps. In the beginning, they're going to start off with scheduling medical appointments and managing excuse me, managing medications. Then they'll move on to using rideshare and public transportation. And then finally, they're going to work on meal planning and grocery shopping with minimal supports. And the outcome of that would be that the person would be able to attend doctor's appointments independently and use public transportation to get to work. And the third example is Jordan. They have a part-time job, but they do struggle with workplace communication and time management. So the skills needed related to the person-centered goals would be improving coworker interactions, task management, and work-life balance. The steps here would be starting off with role playing and some workplace interactions, moving on to time management and setting priorities, meeting deadlines, and then finally handling stress and then having a healthy work-life balance. And the outcome would be communicates effectively, meets deadlines, and balances responsibility. And that is my slide, and I think I'm going to kick it back to Seth for closing and questions.
Awesome.
Yep. I guess we can probably get started on some questions. We got 15 minutes.
Absolutely, Seth. So I'll scroll back up and try to get some questions from the chat for you. And if you have any burning question, please raise your hand and we can let you also come off mute and ask your question. So one question from Jill is on whether the family advisory group for the unbundling of day services is happening now, and how would one become a family? How would a family become involved?
Michelle did answer that, and just emailing Michelle on that.
Oh,
They
awesome,
have not started
awesome.
yet.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Michelle, for answering that. Yes, Camille did raise a question about whether the slides will be available. Yes, we will post the slides and the video for those that are unable to make it. Is the MFEI done by the CDDO in person or virtual?
Right now, there's flexibility for that, so it should really be driven by what the participant is most comfortable with. So it should be, kind of driven by that.
And Seth, it's Angie. I asked the question, is the CDDO doing that or the MCO doing that?
The CDDO is doing.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Angie. Let's see here. Cami did ask a question about who is the final determiner. And I want to think that would be the MFEI.
Yeah, on the final determiner. So when it comes to eligibility determinations, it's supposed to be the state that ultimately has kind of that final say is if somebody is eligible for services or not. And so that's where, the use of something like a level of care tool where it's the state's kind of, for lack of a better term, proprietary algorithm where you are just inputting the stuff, the answers, and then it determines, kind of a yes or no. That is the state sort of determining, yes, this person is eligible, or no, they are not.
Thank you, Seth. Another question here is, what are the specifics for the process if complex needs rate is what is needed for the individual?
Robin, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what the extraordinary funding process looks like today and what we're kind of hoping to, what our future state is we want to look at?
Well, currently the EF process is extraordinary funding. And so when a person has extraordinary support needs, then the provider would submit an application. There's special names for the application, but essentially an application to the MCOs. And the MCOs process that application. There's two kinds of EF. There's a super tier currently, which kind of, I say, shadows the current tier rate. And then there's something called individualized rates when the provider is able to show the support needs of the person being an even higher level than what the super tier may offer. So they're close to the same process, but the individualized rates when requested are scrutinized a little bit more because it's additional funding. And there's a cost audit tool, it's a spreadsheet, and it's kind of a pain. We've been talking about trying to simplify that a little bit and kind of redoing the application tool because it's needs updated in my opinion. And then so once we do that, we're thinking about just how that would look with the new tier system. And there's still some stuff up in the air, but our goal might be to make the tool a little bit easier to use so providers are able to utilize it a little bit more efficiently. Because there is there's a big administration burden for the providers when they currently do that. And then, additionally, there's an administrative burden on the MCOs. So we want to make sure that we're balanced in that way.
Thank you very much, Robin, for answering that. Now, there are some comments here about, I think one from Melanie, about having a hard time how the MCO can do a tier level. Please explain again when they are for profit.
Yeah, so I think kind of a point of clarification here is that the MCOs won't be determining tiers. So this is not it's not up to the MCO's discretion as to where somebody would fall in the tier. It's a standardized, rules-based system that is going to be based on research-backed, validated data that's going to objectively measure the needs. And so that's where essentially the algorithm will place somebody in that. But then we need to be able to kind of replace some of those inconsistencies that currently exist in the basis. And so it's that objective measurement that will bring in kind of that standardizing process for consistency and transparency and kind of equity. So you will be able to have that assessment done at one MCO, and it would place you in, a set tier. That same another MCO with a different care coordinator doing the exact same assessment, it would put them in the same exact tier. And so there will be the kind of complete oversight of that process and being able to, the KDADs and KDHE being able to audit those tiering outcomes, kind of compare it between MCOs, ensure that accuracy, to prevent any of that misuse of the system. But again, it's not them determining the tiers. It's a standardized rules-based system.
Thank you very much, Seth. And we are almost at time. Just wanted to call our attention to that. But before I pick up any more question, I want to just announce that we still have our open office hours that will be happening twice a month, bi-weekly. This week's webinar did replace this week's open office hours. So please look out for our announcements on those. If you have questions to ask us, please feel free to attend. It is free. We're not doing any presentation. It's just KDADs on the call here to answer your questions. Bring your questions related to any of the projects we've looked at today, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So taking some more questions before we call it a day here. One from Cami as well. How many assessments do there need to be? We're talking about, I'm assuming, and can we please come off mute if you want to expand on this question, but just looking at the number of assessments, the MFEI, the needs, the service planning assessment. So Seth, are we adding any more assessment to the number of assessments we currently have?
No, I certainly am. I would like to see a reduction in the number of assessments that we can make somebody go through. And I do think there's, some of these initiatives could potentially lead to that outcome, or at least a reduction in the time it takes to complete some of these assessments. But right now there's, as I understand, there's kind of about 3 different meetings that people have to have. You have to kind of have your annual reassessment, with the basis, and then you got to meet with your care coordinator, and they got to redo the needs assessment and the person-centered service plan. And then at another meeting, you're meeting with your target case manager to do the support plan functions. And so we certainly would like to see some streamlining in that effort. But these proposed changes aren't addressing specifically the number of assessments. That would still be the same as it is today.
So Seth, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so hi, it's Cammie.
Hey, Cammie.
What, and this came up earlier when Commissioner Hayden met with ACT. The issue is you were talking about a population that has congenital permanent disability. Why do they have to justify that they are disabled year after year after year after year? There should be a box, permanent disability, check, done. How many resources are we going to waste on and jump hoops are we going to make families jump through to year after year prove that their family member has a disability? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do think, to your point, Cammie, I mean, we certainly want to be able to streamline this, with the MFEI and kind of the way the MCOs are going to be, and CDDOs are both going to be doing this, that there is a chance for some streamlining across between the data the MCOs collect through the MFEI and being able to get that data into the MCO, so they're not duplicating questions. And so there's a chance that some of these meetings could be reduced over time, and certainly I know that there's just scheduling concerns to try to not duplicate assessments. But yeah, that's on our radar as well. And if there's things that we can do to try to reduce the number of meetings and the number of assessments that folks have, we certainly will. I know on the service plan, like the person-centered service planning, that's an annual requirement from CMS that a person has to.
I don't have a problem with person-centered support plan, but person-centered service planning, that's the MCO's requirement, correct?
Yes.
So pretty ridiculous and quite a waste of resources. Do you think that my daughter is magically from one year to the next no longer going to have extra material on her 21st chromosome?
Mm-hmm. And that's, one of the benefits of moving towards a kind of a research-backed system is that we might be able to implement some of that stuff. I know there are states that do level of care reevaluations not on an annual basis. So this allows us to then kind of study and potentially implement things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cammie. So maybe we'll take one more question here, or maybe more if time permits. Let's see here. So this is a very good question from Shauna. She did ask, and I'm taking this is related to unbundling day services. Are you saying that our current day services provider will offer all the options under one roof?
No, that is not. No, so I think there's been some misconceptions, kind of on 2 opposite ends of the pole here of, and I totally understand where somebody might come at this, of, okay, so I'm going to have to pick one of these day services and only provide one of them, or I'm going to have to provide all of these, and neither one of those are true. You know, so if these were brand new like just like we have day providers who are only day providers, we've got day providers who are residential providers, we've got day providers who are FMS and residential providers, and kind of do different things. So providers will be able to kind of pick and choose which services that they want to maybe specialize in. And then the participants will be able to kind of look at all of the service options available to them, look at their person-centered service plan, their person-centered support plan, and then pick and choose those services that they want to fill up their entire day, their entire week, their month. And so, yeah,
I would even add there's participants out there that actually have 2 different day service providers, because one of them is maybe, you know, day services without walls, and that's great fun, but it's also exhausting, and maybe they want to just hang out with a different provider and, you know, a different social group and stuff. So there's just so much diversity out there.
Awesome. And we are at time. Seth, any final comments for this group as we bring this to an end?
no, just really appreciate y'all taking time out of your day to hear me blather on about some of this stuff.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Seth. And thank you very much, everyone, for being a part of this webinar. We will put the recording and put some additional information out there. We will be having our webinars monthly going forward. So you will have opportunities to ask some, more questions about the projects that we've presented today. Please attend our open office hours. Bring questions, different questions regarding some of these projects or outside of some of these projects. And we will do our best to provide answers. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.
And thanks to the interpreter, Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.